Hello from your favorite Grasslands PR team. This week we're back with another reason why these overlooked and underappreciated ecosystems are objectively the best biome. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Nicole. And today we are just going to embrace little 12-year-old Nicole's passions of horses.
Oh my god, really?
Yes.
That's so funny because today I came in expecting an episode on mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Just wanted to keep you on your toes.
I like it. We are still doing so many mammals though.
I know, but I just got excited after last week's episode about horses and I had to follow that.
Okay. I understand. Okay, but first, before we get into that, we want to mention that April is a special month in the land of podcasts because Podchaser is donating 25 cents to Meals on Wheels for every podcast review that is received on their site. So, yeah, no better time to make our day and help us out with a review. We'll put a link to our Podchaser page. It's just a platform for leaving reviews and connecting with podcasts and their owners and hosts. So, if you feel like leaving us a review there, you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts as well, but they're not going to donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels for your review like Podchaser is. So bounce on over there and make multiple people's days.
Yes. Are you ready to learn about horses?
I suppose. I never went through a horse phase.
Really?
I don't think I did.
Man, I had okay, I hated Barbie growing up, but there was this Barbie horse game that was my jam. I don't remember anything about it. I just remember playing it all the time because it had horses in it. And I had like a horse racing game and yeah.
I actually had that Barbie horse game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember like feeding him sugar cubes and stuff.
Yeah. I literally don't remember what the purpose of the game was at all, just that there was horses in it, and I just ran around and had fun with the horse. Like, there is even a Lego game that came out, like, PS2 era, and it had a horse in it, and I just rode that horse around in this one area that you could ride the horse around in all the time. Like, I remember I was so excited because when you, like, walked across the bridge, it made, like, a different clop-clop noise versus, like, the grass, and, like, oh my gosh, that was just, like, the coolest thing. Again, don't remember which Lego game it was. I just remember the horse.
Oh, man. I love how all of your horse memories involve video games, too. That seems also very on brand.
Right. I mean, I saw horses at, like, the zoo and at Cowtown, our local, historical museum. But, like, yeah. Anytime there was a video game with a horse in it, like, I was sold. Didn't matter what it was about.
You should play Witcher 3. Ride a horse all over the continent, man.
You're so right. Okay, so, horses. Non-video game horses. Okay, so I wanted to kind of talk about prehistoric horses, like, very, very briefly. Modern horses, the domestication of horses, and then a very special horse. I'm sure you know what it is, but
yeah, the Takhi
we'll keep the
horse.
suspense up. No, shh. We'll keep the suspense up for anyone who doesn't know somehow. Okay.
Oh, man. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, prehistoric horses. There is a lot of information out there on prehistoric horses. Please feel free to do your own research, but I just kind of wanted to talk about, where they originated from. So, do you know where they evolved?
I have no idea. Was it North America?
It was North America! Yay!
Man, okay.
Yep. So, like, I think kind of in the same time frame as camels, as these grasslands were slowly becoming more prominent, horses were like, yeah, let's do it. And they became more and more prominent. They evolved into different species, all that fun stuff. And the first horse that, like, we could call a horse was called Eohippus, or the Dawn Horse, which is just great. I love that name.
It just sounds like a childhood video game horse.
Yes, it does. You're not wrong. And this horse was a browser rather than a grazer, so he ate leaves and bushes and things rather than grass.
Like camels.
Like camels, yeah. Wild. And these guys are very small. They only stood about 50 centimeters or 20 inches high at the shoulder, because horses are always measured at the shoulder. And in horse people talk, that's 5 hands. Okay. And this guy... Hey, horse people are a special breed. Do you even know how big a hand is in horse speak?
I'm assuming it's just a hand.
I mean, kind of. It actually has a distinct measurement. Because, like, everybody's hands are different sizes. So, like, a hand is 4 inches.
Okay.
I don't know why they don't just describe them in, like, feet or centimeters or inches. They always describe them in hands.
That's so extra.
A little bit. I'm sure there's some kind of a historical reason for it, but I didn't look into it.
Yeah, that's the only explanation.
But the Eohippus, or dawn horse, had actually padded feet, and it had 4 hooves on each front foot and 3 on the back foot.
Where's the pad?
In between, so, like, its toes had the hooves, and then, like, its palm had the pads.
Ugh.
Yeah, so...
Wait, so it's like a dog, but if its toenails were hooves.
Sure. Yes. I don't like that picture, but yes, essentially.
You liked the picture before it was described that way?
I mean, no, I was just trying not to think about it too much, but it was disturbing enough that I wanted to share it with you. I will show you a picture of him real quick.
Oh, no. Oh, that's less weird, because it's walking on its toes. I figured It had a pad because it also stood on the pad at the same time as the hooves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of ancient horses had pads on its feet, but a lot of them didn't, like, actually use it by the time you, like, called them horses. So.
Okay.
But still, the 4 tiny little hooves are very strange. And this guy, he looks almost more like a small deer rather than a horse. But he is considered the first horse. So, very handsome little gentleman with weird toes. And of course, having 4 hooves is different than modern horses, who only have 1 hoof. But it's still the fingers, so the middle digit ended up becoming elongated in modern horses, and so they walk just on 1 toe, and they're constantly flipping you off, and I don't know, it just cracks me up.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's interesting that on this dawn horse, even there where it's got 4 fingers, that middle one is still more stout and sturdy and bigger than the others.
Yeah, it's still a little bit elongated, and it's beefier, for sure. So that's the Eohippus. Like I said, from the Eohippus, we saw quite a bit of evolution to various different species. Horses then spread to Europe and South America, and after the Bering Land Bridge disappeared, the North American and South American horses actually went extinct. So then we only had horses in, the old world. So it's kind of an interesting evolutionary line. It reminds me a lot, again, of camels. So
yeah, did they go extinct around the time there were people living in North America? I guess they had to if it was after the Bering Land Bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Disappeared,
yeah. And of course, as settlers came to the New World, they brought horses back with them.
Okay.
But that brings us to modern horses. And horses are just wild creatures. They're too tall, they're too strong, they can easily kill you, and yet we put small children on their back just for giggles. And part of me kind of fears horses as an adult. Even though as a child, I just thought they were so cute and friendly. I know better now. They can be kind of intense. But they have been a huge part of human culture for a really long time. And, as horses were domesticated, we used them for a lot of different, resources. We used them for meat. Some people have even used mare's milk as an alcoholic beverage called kumis. So
Ooh.
It's kind of cool. And something, let's go back to anatomy for just a second, because I don't think a lot of people realize this. So when you look at a horse, that joint that is, about halfway from the ground to their belly is not their knee, it is their wrist. And this is true for like giraffes, camels. I forgot we were just talking about camels, goats, sheep, all those guys. Of course, they all have 2 toes instead of the 1 toe like a horse, but a lot of people think that is their knee, and it is not. So their fingers and the bones and what we would call like their hand are very much elongated, and they're just walking on that 1 toe or 2 toes in the case of those other animals.
I'll add birds to that list too, because that's another one.
Birds are weird too.
see like the backwards facing knee, but it's actually their wrist or ankle.
Yeah. I love comparative anatomy, so just had to throw that in there.
Fantastic.
Okay, so modern horses. We have the genus Equus, which includes horses, donkeys, and zebras. So they're all very closely related. They can interbreed, and usually those offspring are not fertile. Do you know at least a couple of the 7 living equines?
There's 7 of them?
There's 7 species of equines.
Are we including
alive
subspecies?
Today. Nope.
Okay. The Takhi.
I mean, technically, they're all subspecies because they're all part of the same. Yeah, it's fine.
Wait, what?
The Takhi. Yeah. Yes.
Now I'm confused.
There are a lot of subspecies when we talk about horses, but I'll break it down.
Okay. The Takhi horse.
Yes.
How do you say the Russian name, or
Przewalkskis.
Przewalkskis?
Yeah, or the pea horse. All the same thing.
Cool.
What else?
Zebras.
Yes.
Donkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Regular horses. I don't know what to call them. They're just horses.
Uh-huh.
Do they have a common name?
Kind of.
The domestic
is that
horse.
Domestic horse, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The miniature horse?
Mini horses are a breed of horse.
Dang. Okay. Wait, if I only said like 3 horses. 4.
Yeah.
Okay. There's 3 more?
There's 7 total.
Oh my gosh. Okay. None of them are wild, so let's think about this.
So I'll give you a hint.
No.
There's actually 3. Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
There's 3 species of zebra. There's the Grevy zebra, the plains zebra, and the mountain zebra.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So
there's 3 right there.
So I need 1 more, and that's going to be the other donkey species.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
There's 2 species of donkeys, 3 species of zebra. That's 5. And then Equus ferus, which is the wild horse, quote unquote.
It's a feral horse.
Yeah. It actually includes domesticated horse and the Przewalkski's horse.
Okay, so now you're switching your stance and saying that the Przewalkski's or the Takhi horse is a subspecies.
So they're both subspecies of the same species, according to, the powers that be. I know it's weird.
What? Who are these powers?
I don't know. I don't ask questions like that. That's above my pay grade.
You should. Because last time you were very willing to call it its own species.
Mm-hmm.
What changed?
I said that the Przewalkski's horse has never been domesticated, is what I said.
Okay. Wait, hang on a second then, because that means the Przewalkski's or the Takhi horse is not the only wild horse.
It is.
No, there's zebras.
Well, it depends on what you call... Yeah, I guess you're right. You're right. But zebras have also been domesticated, so,
They have?
And whenever we talk about, so those are the genus, that horses belong to. So like donkeys, zebras, horses. But when we talk about like horses, then you just have the domesticated horse and the Przewalskis. So the Przewalski is the only remaining wild horse.
Okay. Horse people, why do you have to make everything about your animal different from every other animal? Because the camel people are happy to say that every member of the genus Camelus is a camel. Okay. I'm willing to play by their rules, I guess, this time. Stupid horse people.
Thank you.
Ridiculous.
Also, I forgot the Kiang. The Kiang is another equine. So the African wild ass, which includes the domesticated donkey, all domesticated donkeys, because there's several different breeds.
Okay.
The onager, which is the Asiatic wild ass, the Kiang, the Grevy zebra, the plain zebra, the mountain zebra, and then Equus ferus, which is the wild horse, and the wild horse, quote unquote, which is domesticated horse and the Przewalski's horse together. So, horse genetics are weird.
Okay. I'm not happy about this, but we can move on.
Sorry. So yes, 7 species, they can all interbreed, yada, yada, yada. So how did we domesticate them? This is also a muddy mess that no one really knows.
Okay.
So buckle in. So, there are many studies looking at modern horse DNA throughout the world. The maternal side of the DNA suggests a wide range of ancestral mares being used to make the modern horse, while paternal DNA shows very little variation. And this has kind of confused people for a long time, but the most modern consensus that I could find was that there were just simply many mares used, but very few stallions. And, wild horses are very wild. Mm-hmm. And especially the stallions that are, they're fighting to protect their herd, and they just are hard to tame. So they took the few nice stallions that they could find, and then lots of different mares from honestly all over the world, and use those to create what we now call the domestic horse.
Fascinating.
Yes. And looking at all of the data that we currently have, it appears that horse domestication was not a single event. For a lot of domesticated animals, we can kind of point at, this year or this time frame and this place was when it happened, but that is not true for horses. And it's really more of several smaller events, with wild horses being bred back to domestic stock to increase, genetic diversity and to add in desired traits. So Western Eurasia appears to be the first area that modern horses were domesticated, more or less, with even a domestication event happening in the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal. But all of those horses from that domesticated event actually went extinct, which is kind of interesting. So we believe that, modern horses that we still have were domesticated in the Eurasian steppe, in an area covering Ukraine to Kazakhstan. The trading of horses was very lucrative, so that's why we have a kind of unclear picture of exactly where it happened or when it happened, but we're guessing about 6,000 years ago.
Wow, okay. So that's more recent than I expected.
Yeah, same. Because they are such a huge part of, human culture throughout time. But I don't know. I guess they're just really hard to domesticate.
Yeah, hard to chase down, I'm sure.
Yeah, hard to chase horses when you don't have a horse. So
okay, yeah.
So there was a really cool article that The Conversation put forward March of last year, and it broke down some of those, domestication events and things like that. And one of the breakthroughs that scientists had when figuring out, do these horse bones belong to a domesticated horse or a wild horse, was actually by looking at the horse's teeth. Yeah. So they found that, the halters that people used back then would have metal mouthpieces, and it led to very distinctive bit wear on their teeth.
So, that kind of tooth analysis.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I thought it was going to be more of like an anatomical thing, not a wear and tear on the teeth thing.
Yeah, I thought for sure it was going to be like, oh, their diet changed, so obviously they're domesticated now. But no, it was the wear on their teeth.
Yeah, exactly. That's really cool. I don't know why I'm geeking out about that so much, but it really tickled me.
No, it got me really excited too, so don't feel bad.
Look at us being excited about horse teeth. What is wrong with us?
Nothing. We are perfect.
I don't even like horses, man.
Well, by the end of this, I hope you do.
Okay.
And another, issue when it comes to learning about early horses and early people that used these horses is that it's extremely difficult to follow nomadic people through, archaeological perspective, because they didn't have permanent structures. They didn't have, burial sites or, old structure walls or anything like that, because they moved around constantly, especially after horses, became more part of their culture and they had to move in order to feed their herds. So it's extremely difficult to learn about these people and these horses.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who are these people? Like, what group is this, or do we even know?
So some of them have probably just don't exist anymore, but especially Mongolian cultures loved their horses and still do. And so, the Hun Empire, the Mongol Empire, these really big nomadic groups that we associate with like warfare and things like that are also people that we unfortunately don't know a lot about. Like, we know a lot, but we don't know about their, day-to-day activities. The information that we know is more from accounts of nearby civilizations that were not nomadic. So if they raided a village, then that village would have, an account of that happening.
Right.
But otherwise, it's hard to track people that are constantly moving.
Yeah. That's so cool. I'm just now realizing how many nomadic groups there are of like indigenous cultures, and how they're usually associated with big grassland regions.
Oh yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, but it shouldn't be surprising because the animals that are there are also nomadic, because grasslands can't support, a big group of animal or people living in one place. They just can't. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, the Hun and the Mongol Empire, I'll touch on them a little bit, but like, this is not my area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination. People spend their whole lives, delving into this kind of stuff. But they really had, during their respective times, the Huns were before the Mongols, but they had total power over much of the steppe, and even, especially with the Mongol Empire, through much of Europe and Asia. Like, they just completely dominated that entire landscape for a really long time, because they had horses, and those horses, allowed them to move around and allowed them to overpower other people that did not have horses. And it wasn't until, strong civilizations that started, building walls and using, more advanced weaponry that could overpower those horse armies that those empires finally fell.
Wow.
Yeah. And a lot of those nomadic civilizations still exist, whether in the steppe or, on the outskirts of it. But many of them were displaced, but as, cities and agriculture took over and became the more dominant, lifestyle. The Silk Road trading route was also largely maintained by, horses, whether that's selling the horses or using the horses to help move stuff. Camels were also a huge part of that, but who cares about them? Oh, I expected a scream of indignation. Wow.
Oh, I mean, I didn't want to interrupt the horses. I'm like, I'm willing to let the horses have their moment. It should be obvious that I protest this idea. I don't know, but that's just because I'm biased against horses. I never really found camels especially interesting before I researched them either. So it seems to me inarguable that camels are the more interesting animal, but I'm realizing how similar their history is.
Yeah.
And I find that to be very interesting. So I'm going to walk back on that. I'm going to just say, yes, please tell us more about how cool horses are.
Okay. I appreciate that the only reason you like horses are because they're kind of like camels.
Yeah.
It's fair. I'll take it. Whatever I can take.
Okay.
So, like I said, a lot of these nomadic tribes and peoples were really, really hard to study, but recently there was a nomad site in Kazakhstan that was discovered, and it had a ton of horse bones and, just very, very exciting find for anthropology. And again, they showed that wear pattern on the teeth, so we're pretty sure that they were domesticated. And there was even ceramic pieces of pottery with evidence of horse milk in them. So people, we are pretty sure that this is, domesticated horses. However,
oh boy,
in 2018, they kind of started looking at some of these old sites, specifically one in Botai, that they saw that these horse bones were not domesticated horses, but rather the bones of Takhi, the Przewalkski's horse.
Yes. It's all coming together now. Okay.
Yes. So remember how last episode I was like, maybe Przewalkskis aren't wild, we don't know. This was that study that kind of threw everything that we thought we knew about horses on its head. And this brought forth a lot of controversy that, the Takhi might not be the last remaining wild horse at all. However, many scientists believe that the Botai Takhis were actually a failed domestication attempt. So the Takhi, for now, is still considered the last wild horse. And that's, of course, different than the American Mustang or the Australian Brumby, which are escaped domesticated animals that have become feral.
Okay.
So.
Oh, man, this is the most interesting thing that's happened in a minute. My head is reeling a little bit. Dude, why do they think that it was a failed domestication attempt? What evidence did they have that made them think that or suggest that? Is it because of a combination of the information we have about their genetic history with the fact that they found these remains, or was it something specific about the remains?
I think a large part of it, and I don't know for sure, but I believe that a large part of it is just that we haven't found Takhi bones in other such, settings. So, obviously you find them out in the wild everywhere, but as far as in a human settlement like this, I think this is one of the only, if not the only, examples of this. So,
wow.
Yeah. And even the group that found the Botai site in 2018, they went back and did more study with them and were like, sorry, we said that the Takhi is not actually wild. We think that this was a failed domestication attempt.
Okay. So even the original group that made that discovery
correct
kind of agrees with that. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that is so cool, though.
Mm-hmm.
Man, and now we're going to have to keep an eye out for any future discoveries. I wonder if they're going to go back and look at other horse remains they found at sites and double check that they were in fact domestic horses and not the Takhi horse.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. And yeah, there's a lot of controversy behind this because the Takhi is very much revered, and is like a sacred animal. Takhi is the Mongolian word for the Przewalski's horse, and it means spirit or worthy of worship. So they, this horse is extremely important to the people of this area. You don't ride the Takhi or stable it. It's wild.
Yeah.
I just love that.
It makes sense to me that an animal that maybe there even was a domestication attempt and it just could not be domesticated, like even more reason to consider it such like a wild spirit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's talk more about the beautiful Takhi. I personally first fell in love with the Takhi back in 2001 when I first heard about them in the wonderful video game Zoo Tycoon.
So once again, everything is video games. It's all video games. I love this episode just because of this.
I'm so glad. They say video games rot your brain, but you can learn stuff from them.
Oh my gosh, yes. Just this week. Oh, never mind.
Oh gosh, what?
Oh, no, I'm just, I've played a lot of Stardew Valley and I'm learning a lot about fish. I don't care about fish at all, but I learned that sturgeon can live to be 150 years old because I was trying to catch them in the mountain lake, and I was like, wow, all right, fish, sometimes you're cool.
Yes, fish are so cool.
Shut up.
And so are video games. But I digress. One of the best sources by far for information on the Takhi is the International Takhi Group. Their website is savethewildhorse.org. I mentioned this last week. But just a quick description of them if you've never seen one. The Takhi is like this beautiful, rich brown color on their head, neck, and back, which slowly fades to kind of a creamy off-white color on their sides and on their belly. Their legs also have some brown on them, and sometimes will have striping, which is very indicative of like ancient wild horses. And their manes are very short and stand straight up, kind of like a zebra, and are a very dark brown, almost black color, and their tail is the same color as well. They also have the cutest little muzzle markings that are that beautiful, creamy off-white color, and they have white eyeliner as well. They are beautiful.
Is it winged?
Is it what?
Is the eyeliner winged?
Not really. It's just kind of all the way around. If only it was winged.
Okay, that's all right. It's a little bit of an outdated style, but you did say they were more ancient, so.
Yes. And these guys stand about 140 centimeters tall, about 55 inches, again, at the shoulder.
How many hands is that?
Oh my gosh, I actually wrote it down. It's 14 hands.
Cool, that means nothing to me, but I wanted to ask.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, 14 times 4 is like about 55.
Don't make us do math. Stop that. Okay.
Oh,
anyway.
Okay, sorry. I mean, I had to do math to figure it out. But they are very, very stocky horses with very broad faces as well. There's not very many horses that look like them, which again kind of helps with the assumption that they are like the last wild horse. The Takhi is also listed as endangered by the IUCN. It's not doing great, but it's doing better than it has in the past, and it has been listed since 2011. The IUCN also recommends a population of at least 1,000 individuals to be like a stable population, and as of October 2020, do you want to guess how many Takhi are in the wild?
If they're endangered, is it like a few hundred?
Mm-hmm. It's 320.
Oh, wow.
With 56 of those animals being foals. So they are like reproducing and they're doing fairly well. And even though 300 doesn't sound like a lot, if you delve back into their history, it's pretty impressive because they were once extinct in the wild. Yes. So around the year 1880, Russian explorer Nicole Przewalkski, hence Przewalski's horse, brought back a gifted hide and skull from the Mongolian people that was then unknown to the Western world, and it was put in a museum. Everybody was like, wow, what a beautiful horse. They named it after him. And at the turn of the century, all this craze about the Przewalski's horse had collectors taking them from the wild for mounts, zoos, and private collections.
Why are people like this?
Yeah. So, in the 1960s, the last Takhi was seen in the wild in a park, kind of. We'll get into it. It's kind of like a park, but not really. The Great Gobi Bee is what it's called. So, 1960s, last Takhi, gone. In the 1940s, so 20 years prior, people were finding out that, those wild individuals were starting to decline, and in captivity they were also declining because people just didn't know a lot about them. They didn't know how to keep them. They were really, really hard to keep. And this ended with only 13 breeding individuals left in the world.
Oh, wow. That's not even pairs. That's individuals.
Individuals, yes.
Ooh.
Yes. So, again, people noticed that, wow, there's 13 in captivity and not any, by the time the 1960s came around, in the wild. So, breeding for the sake of conservation began, and between 1992 and 2004, 89 Takhi were reintroduced into an area called Takhi Nature Reserve. So in 2007, the first Takhi were released into the Great Gobi Bee, just a few miles from where the last Takhi was seen in the wild, which is just, makes my heart soar. I don't know. It just is really, really cool conservation story. And people traveled for days to come see the Takhi released back into its ancestral grounds, because a lot of the people that came were nomadic people. So it's not like they just and there's no roads. So it's not like they hopped in the car and were there in a couple hours. They traveled for days to come and watch these horses be re-released into the wild.
Wow. I've got chills thinking about what a powerful experience that must have been.
Yes. Yeah. I'm holding my chest because I'm
wow.
So in 2020, the Great Gobi Bee was actually doubled in size to further protect the Takhi and other animals to call this area home. All of these conservation efforts led to, again, the wild Takhi population exceeding 300 for the first time just in 2020.
Wow.
And there are about 2,500 animals in the world. And that's up from 13 individuals total in the 1940s.
Oh my gosh. And they're not, one of those animals that pumps out a ton of babies,
No.
You hear stories about that kind of stuff with ferrets, and it's I mean, they have several kits. So it seems even more amazing to me that a horse is able to be bumped back up into such high numbers. Oh, this is so good. We're recording this on Easter, for the record, and this is the best vibes I've had all day.
Aww.
It's feels very renewing in the spirit of the celebration of spring and Easter. The flowers are budding, the Takhi horses are roaming their ancestral plains. Ooh.
Yes. Ooh, I love that. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about those conservation efforts that led to this success, because it's really fascinating, and it's not like anything that I've heard of people, at least in the United States, doing.
Really?
And I don't know, it's just interesting. So the Great Gobi Bee, the bee, there's an A and a B, but it's also kind of short for biosphere. So the full name is the Great Gobi Biosphere.
Oh, okay.
Yes, which is a very cool word. And it is known as it is known as a biosphere reserve. Have you ever heard of this before?
Never.
Okay. I hadn't either. So, biosphere reserves are a very special kind of conservation where they don't just have a piece of land where people can't go and, whatever, it's just for the animals. Biosphere reserves are specifically put in place to foster animal-human relations, and humans actually habitate biospheres.
Ooh.
Yeah. So many nomadic people still live on this land and sustainably use it. So they're still, grazing their sheep and their goats and their own horses. And it's just a really interesting example of humans and wildlife working together rather than forcing, an either-or situation. And it's something that, happened for millennia naturally because, these people, they have to have this land. They can't just destroy it because it's their whole livelihood. So,
or as you would say in like the Great Plains agricultural region, you can't take it out of production.
Yeah. Absolutely. So worldwide, there are about 257 million people living on biosphere reserves. And there are 701 biosphere reserves in 129 countries, including the United States. And I had no idea that this thing even existed. And yet, we have 28 biosphere reserves in the United States.
What? Where?
Good question. So, I didn't write down all of them because there's 28 of them. But
wow.
Two famous
Slacker.
Examples are... I'm so sorry. Two famous examples of biosphere reserves in the U.S. are the Everglades in Florida and Yellowstone, but it also includes places like Denali, Big Bend, Guanica, and a bunch of other ones. So, I mean, there's 28 of them, but I've never heard this term before.
Yeah, how is Yellowstone a biosphere? Sorry, it's maybe exposing some of my, ignorance about national parks, but I didn't think that any of Yellowstone was, privately owned and lived on.
Yes, so I think you are correct. So Yellowstone National Park itself, the way that biospheres work is that there's often a core piece of it where people are not allowed to live, so it's just for the animals. So that is called the Strictly Protected Area, SPA. There's also then a buffer zone around the SPA where people can live and tourism is allowed, all those fun things. Around the buffer zone is another zone called the transitional area where there are still some restrictions, but it's a little bit lighter on human activity. So there's 3 different kind of sections to it.
Okay. Can you give an example of what those restrictions might be?
So I don't know as far as especially the buffer zone, I'm not sure exactly. And it might be that it changes depending on the country. Because again, these exist in 129 different countries. But especially with the inner zones, the buffer zone is just outside of the strictly protected area. And so inside the buffer zone, people have to use sustainable practices. So I don't think things like farming are allowed unless it's pretty small scale. So it's especially in Mongolia, it's going to be mostly those nomadic tribes that, don't have as much of a footprint and still are, regulated somewhat, but I don't know the exact specifics. But again, tourism is allowed within that buffer zone. And then once you get out to that the transitional area outside of the buffer zone, those restrictions relax a lot. And then it's almost not even obvious that it's there in a lot of examples that I saw. But I don't think that big businesses could be there. It's still focused on small communities of people.
Okay. So less urban sprawl, more farming communities or ranching communities, so. that sort of thing?
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. You're not going to just plop down a couple Walmarts and like, you know, an outdoor shopping mall within a biosphere reserve.
Okay.
It's really, really cool. But yeah, I don't know all the exacts. Again, this was a term that I had never heard of before I started researching the Takhi. And I was like, what is a biosphere reserve? So if you want to learn more, the UNESCO website, UNESCO.org/biosphere is a great resource for you. We'll put it in the show notes. So, but it's really cool. And they actually have on their website like a map of all the different biospheres, and there's a ton in Mexico, especially the southern part of Mexico. But I don't know, 714 biospheres out there, and neither one of us had ever heard of this before.
Wow, that's insane. Oh, for the record, it's en.unesco.org.
Oh.
Yeah, if you want it in English. Oh my gosh. Okay, I have stuff to read, but we're still talking about horses, so sorry for the detour. I will read this later.
I appreciate it, because I'm just glad that I just wasn't like ignorant on this whole biosphere thing, because it's so cool. And like they specifically, like, if you, I don't want to get too hung up in the weeds, but if you go on their website, like it specifically is talking about, you know, fostering that relationship with the people and having the people being like in charge of the conservation of their own land, and you know, teaching those people how to, you know, protect their land. And like it's very human focused conservation, which is smart.
Yeah, like they literally say on their website under, you know, what is a biosphere reserve, that it's a learning place for sustainable development. Yeah, like, that's so cool. Like that not only is the sustainable development huge part of it, but that it's a learning place. Like it's a place to learn and to grow and to develop new ideas and to
No, absolutely. Like it's so fascinating. So something that kind of goes hand in hand with this biosphere ideology, I guess, was this really cool paper that I found published in 2012 called A Collaborative Approach for Estimating Terrestrial Wildlife Abundance. So they actually had local nomadic people in Mongolia help count various animals throughout the Great Gobi. And this included 50 sample points, and the counts were carried out simultaneously, so at the same time, to try to get a better idea of just how many animals were using this land. Because again, you know, we have things like the Mongolian gazelles, where it's like, do we have 800,000 of them? Do we have 1.5 million? Who knows? Because it's such a big expanse of land that it's extremely difficult to get accurate numbers. So they, you know, are using the people that are already living there to, you know, get involved with the science, which is so cool. They mention in this article that incorporating local people into science like this, quote, creates vested interest in conservation by the people who are most influential in and most affected by the outcomes, end quote. So, like, scientists are realizing that, you know, how important this is, which is just, it fills me with such joy. So in addition to, you know, bringing in the local people to foster this conservation story, another really, really cool conservation tactic that is used is something called the Great Gobi Six. So this is essentially a bundle of animals, some more charismatic than others, that are deemed high priority and in need of conservation, that live in the Gobi. So the Takhi, obviously, is one of them. Do you want to try to guess at least like one of the other 5?
The saiga antelope.
Yay, the saiga!
And probably the Mongolian gazelle.
It's actually not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The goitered gazelle is part of the Big Six.
Wait, goiter?
Goitered.
Like a goiter. Like it has a goiter.
The males inflate their... I don't think they inflate. The males have like this goiter that develops when it's in breeding season. So
that is so cute.
Is it? It's something, that's for sure. So the Takhi, the saiga antelope, the goitered gazelle, the wild Bactrian camel, the goby bear,
of course,
and the kulan, or wild ass, are the big six. So, I
should have known.
I know, you should have known. But I love this idea of bundling, these big six animals where, naturally by preserving land for the Takhi, you're also saving these other ones. But now they have a reason for all these different scientists and conservationists to work together, because any act at saving, any six of them can be used to help all of them. And it's easier to find support for conservation projects and money and all that stuff. So, genius. I love it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. But I am just so impressed by oh my gosh. I am just so impressed by Mongolia's conservation efforts. And I so very much wish that America would take notes and, save some of our animals that are in dire need.
Yeah, especially when, there's a lot of species that have similar conservation needs, but we're so focused on individual things and like little tiny pieces of land that we're not really doing the kind of large scale conservation work that would actually benefit grassland animals that need that large scale conservation.
Yes, and especially in America, we have that either or mentality. So we have these parks where either people just aren't allowed or it's very highly regulated, and that space is for the animals and like everything else is for the people, but there's no reason why we can't coexist together.
Yeah. Yeah, now I'm sad.
I know. Let's go back to the Takhi. It's fine.
Well,
it's
just
fine.
like, even our national parks that are set aside, like, and our, Bureau of Land Management stuff, like, all of them are sold to people so they can develop it. Like,
yes.
We don't even do a
cheap.
good job of setting aside land specifically for wildlife. Like, all of those federal lands are rented out for very, very cheap prices for any kind of development. Or not any, but for so much development.
Yeah, not even like human development, but like things that we know destroy the land.
Yeah, right. And that contribute to loss of wildlife.
So, going back to the Takhi.
Okay.
These guys, like I said, they're doing surprisingly well. And especially now that they've been reintroduced, they are even more revered, if that's even possible, by the people that live there. And there's some really interesting kind of side effects to that are good. So I found this paper in 2017. It's by Petra Kaczynski, and it was published in Scientific Reports. And it looked at the diet of the pre-extinction horses with the modern day ones. And they found that they were eating differently.
The reintroduced ones are eating differently?
Yes.
Oh, no. Okay.
So, the, pre-1960s horses were grazers in the summer when grass was plenty, but turned to a more browsing lifestyle in the winter. Whereas current wild Takhi are grazers year-round. They are eating that grass year-round.
Why?
And I know, good question. So they hypothesize in that paper that this year-round grazing lifestyle is actually a very good sign, because previously Takhi were kind of pushed into less fertile lands in the winter by people and other animals and things like that. So grazing year-round is a preferred lifestyle that they were not able to do in the past, but they can do now. And that is in large part because of conservation efforts and because of, how revered this animal is and all of this education that's going towards people of Mongolia and around the world.
Oh, that's so awesome.
I know. So it's just so cool. And that societal shift to respect the Takhi now more than ever is probably going to end up what makes the Takhi a true conservation success story, because we can call it a conservation success story right now, but there's barely over 300, and we need at least 1,000 in order to have a stable population. So we're better than we were, but we still have a lot of room to go. So,
and it sounds like they've given these animals the space and the type of habitat that's going to support those numbers as they continue growing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Wow.
And with that human pressure lessened, they still have some threats. Specifically, winters in the steppe can be extremely harsh. So in the 2009 to 2010 winter actually caused the wild population to go from 123 individuals to a mere 49. Since then, there has been a really steady increase in numbers, but, keeping the wild population numbers high and healthy is extremely important to help them survive these natural tragedies that they are going to encounter. This respect for that Takhi is so important going forward for conservation. And more organizations are, like I said, working more closely with the people that have called this land home for generations. The International Takhi Group plans actually to soon hand over their entire project to their Mongolian partners that exist right now, and they will just be available, on the sidelines for advice and support. Which is so cool.
Fantastic.
Yes. On their website, they mentioned that, quote, more than 80% of local nomads earn between 75 and 100% of their income from animal husbandry. So these people are, very dedicated to keeping this land alive because it is their livelihood. Like, they cannot lose it. And, the Takhi is seen as a symbol of the wild steppe. And having the Takhi means that we have good wildlife and good, environment that can support not only the Takhi and the gobi bear and the saiga, but the people. So it's just, it's so good. So hopefully the Takhi and the gobi are around for many generations to come. And by preserving the Takhi, we preserve so much more. The habitat required by other endangered species, the special nomadic way of life for so many people, and just this amazing history of horses and the Takhi and, the Eurasian steppe as a whole. And that story is so varied and complex, and I only just barely scratched the surface in this episode, but I hope that you at least learned a little bit. Rachel and dear listener, and are inspired to maybe, love horses and do some more research into this really unique ecosystem.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't love horses.
Wow.
Still,
do you like them?
Oh yeah, obviously.
Okay.
I feel like I've more fallen in love just with this overall conservation story and the history of the animal and the way that it's been conserved in this like ecosystem level approach to conservation that is working so well for this species, obviously, which is so important to the people that are so dedicated to conserving it, but has also just benefited this whole ecosystem of creatures that is, under threat. And what a fantastic story. I'm kind of surprised at how much I loved this entire episode, Nicole.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah. And I didn't even really talk about the natural history of, the Takhi. Like, it's interesting, but I think the conservation story is just so fascinating.
Exactly. Anybody can go read the factoids about this animal. This was the better story.
Thank you. Also, just as a side note, I know I kept talking about the gobi, which in common culture, a lot of people's minds is a desert, but a lot of it is grassland.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. So it can be true desert down to only 2 inches of rain, but a lot of the gobi is very much grassland. So
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Grassland erasure is a serious problem we're trying to combat.
It is.
The Arctic does a bad job of that, too. A lot of tundra landscapes are technically grasslands. So, meh.
Meh.
Meh. Okay.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks, Nicole, and thanks to everyone else for listening to The Best Biome. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. And if you leave us a review on Podchaser, just remember, they will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels for that review, which is pretty cool. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us a lot. Give us a follow on the social medias, or leave us a voice message, text, or whatever. That's all. So we'll see you guys next week. Conza Prairie is a biosphere reserve.
It is?
Yeah. How the fuck did we not know that Conza Prairie is a biosphere reserve?
I don't know.
Like, it's literally a UNESCO biosphere reserve. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild.
What the fuck? I feel like such an idiot. Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
I love Conza.
I am so sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm gonna stop. Okay.